Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, you want to get a real handle on important stuff quickly and thoroughly.
And without getting bogged down in jargon.
Exactly. So today we're digging into something really fundamental. It's about how we learn effectively and, well, manage ourselves. Specifically, the link between self-regulated learning and executive functions.
Right. And to guide us, we're leaning heavily on a very recent systematic review. It just came out August 2024 in Educational Psychology Review.
Okay.
It's titled The Relationship Between Self-Regulated Learning and Executive Functions, a Systematic Review. So it's a really comprehensive look at the current science.
Excellent. So let's break these two big ideas down first. Self-regulated learning, SRL for short.
Yep, SRL.
It's basically about being proactive in your own learning, right? Like setting goals, figuring out how to reach them, especially in, say, school or academic work.
Exactly. Actively initiating and controlling your cognitive processes. And a huge piece of that is metacognition.
Thinking about thinking.
Pretty much. It's monitoring how your learning is going and, crucially, adjusting your approach if something's not working.
Okay, got it. And then there's executive functions, EF. Where does that come from?
EF comes more from neuropsychology, developmental psychology, studying things like frontal lobe function.
So more brain-based.
Kind of, yeah. They're these top-down mental processes that let you manage yourself to achieve goals. Think attention, decision-making, flexibility, coordinating actions.
Okay, so they sound related, both about control and goals.
They definitely share that goal-directed behavior aspect, yes. And they both involve higher-order cognitive processes with regulatory functions.
But the origins are different. UF from the brain side, SRL more from the classroom learning side.
That's a key difference. EF from neuropsychology, SRL from educational psychology, often focused on school settings.
Which makes you wonder, are we just using different words for the same thing sometimes?
Yeah.
Or maybe the same word for different things?
That's exactly what the review touches on. They mention Kim et al.'s idea of jingle-jangle fallacies.
Jingle-jangle.
Yeah, basically the risk of confusion when terms sound similar but mean different things, or vice versa. So our mission today is really to clarify how these two actually relate based on this latest synthesis of research.
All right, mission accepted. Let's dive into the components then. What makes up SRL? What are we really talking about?
Well, the review often points to a framework, like the one from Perels and colleagues, identifying three key parts.
Okay.
First, there's the cognitive component. That's your strategies, how you process information, your knowledge about tasks.
Like study skills?
Yeah, partly.
Right.
Then there's the motivational component. This is about initiating learning, sustaining effort, your beliefs about your ability, your confidence.
So the why and the can I do this parts.
Exactly. And third, the metacognitive component. This is the planning before you start, monitoring during, and adapting or regulating as you go.
Planning, monitoring, adapting. That sounds crucial.
It really is, and you see this reflected in definitions like Pinterix from 2000. He emphasized learners being active, setting goals, and then monitoring and regulating their cognition, motivation, and behavior.
Very encompassing.
It is. And Zimmerman's model from 2000 gives a nice cyclical view.
A cycle. How so?
He talks about three phases. First, forethought, that's task analysis, goal setting, self-motivation beliefs, like, can I do this task?
Okay, the setup phase.
Right. Then, performance or volitional control. This is where you're actually doing the task, using self-control strategies, self-observing how it's going.
The doing phase.
Yep. And finally, self-reflection. Looking back, judging how you did self-judgment, and then reacting self-reaction. What worked, what didn't, what will I do next time?
Like a feedback loop for learning.
Exactly. It's dynamic. And Bokert's also has a model, a three-layered one.
Layers.
Yeah, regulation of processing modes, regulation of the learning process itself, that's metacognition again, and regulation of the self, which includes motivation and willpower.
So multiple ways to slice it, but always involving cognition, motivation, and that oversight piece, metacognition.
That's a good summary.
Okay, let's switch gears to executive functions then. You said it's an umbrella term.
It really is. Friedman and Miyake, for instance, list things like inhibition stopping automatic responses or ignoring distractions.
Like not checking your phone while studying.
Exactly. Also task switching or shifting attention flexibly.
Juggling different things.
Right, and working memory, holding information in mind and manipulating it. Plus, planning, monitoring, several key skills.
The mental toolkit for getting things done, basically.
That's a good way to put it. And a very influential model comes from Miyake and colleagues back in 2000. They used statistical methods, latent variable analysis, to identify three core EF.
Three core ones.
Yeah, shifting that flexibility piece, updating, which is closely related to working memory, keeping relevant info active, and inhibition resisting interference.
Shifting, updating, inhibition.
And they found these are distinct, but also share some common ground, not totally separate.
Okay, so now the big question. How might these EF components, shifting, updating, inhibition, actually support the SRO components we talked about?
Well, researchers like Hoffman, Hoyle, and Dent have suggested connections. Think about working memory or updating.
Okay.
It seems vital for almost all of SRL, right? Holding instructions, processing information, keeping goals in mind, monitoring progress, even remembering why you're motivated.
Yeah, you need to juggle a lot mentally.
Definitely. And inhibition. That clearly helps with focus, resisting distractions, which supports motivation and staying on task.
Makes sense. Less distraction, more progress.
And shifting could be really important for the metacognitive part of SRL, being flexible enough to change strategies if one isn't working.
So if my flashcards aren't helping, I need the mental flexibility to switch to, say, practice questions.
Precisely. And Bollin-Garner suggested EF supports SRL at these basic cognitive and metacognitive levels, especially in online learning environments.
Interesting. But you mentioned the SRL models are often cyclical.
Right, like Zimmerman's forethought performance reflection loop. That cyclical, feedback-driven nature isn't always as explicit in the EF models, which often present the components as sort of coexisting cognitive abilities.
So a difference in structure, maybe. SRL emphasizes the process over time.
That seems to be a key distinction in how they're typically conceptualized, yes.
Okay. Now, we keep coming back to metacognition. You said it's part of SRL, but it also sounds related to EF concepts like monitoring. Why is it so central here?
It really does seem to bridge the gap. Flavel's classic definition, thinking about thinking, captures it well.
Right.
And he broke it down further. Metacognitive knowledge, knowing about yourself as a learner, the tasks, the strategies.
Like knowing I'm bad at memorizing dates.
Exactly. Then metacognitive experiences those feelings or judgments you have while learning, like, I don't think I understand this.
That uh-oh moment.
Yeah. And others, like Wienman, added metacognitive skills, the procedural know-how for actually regulating your learning, like knowing how to plan or monitor effectively.
So knowledge, experience, and skills.
Right. And other models exist too, like Nelson and Naren's object-level, meta-level distinction, or Pinterich combining knowledge, monitoring, judgments, and control.
Lots of ways to think about it.
But what's really striking is work by Dinsmore and colleagues. They looked at keywords across self-regulation, SRL, and metacognition literature.
And?
They found common terms like monitor, control, regulate, cognition, motivation, behavior, knowledge, linking them all. But notice those first few: monitor, control, regulate.
Very EF-sounding words.
Exactly. So metacognition seems to share language and concepts with both SRL and EF. It involves both knowledge about cognition and the active control of cognition.
So it could really be the key link.
That's a strong hypothesis supported by the review. Falmer and Sperling, for instance, found correlations suggesting it connects both knowledge and control aspects. It acts as a bridge.
Okay, like EF provides the engine power, and metacognition is the driver using that power within the SRL journey.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, I like that.
So how do these things develop? When do kids start showing SRL and EF?
Well, the foundations for SRL seem to emerge in preschool and early elementary years and then strengthen through schooling. That's based on work by Bronson, Chatzipantelli, Hoyle, and Dent.
So it grows with education.
It seems so, but EF development often starts even earlier. Significant growth happens before age 6.
Really? Preschoolers?
Yeah, those core components, inhibition, working memory, shifting, really take off in the preschool years. More complex EFs continue developing through adolescence. Welsh and Robers have documented this well.
So EF might come online a bit earlier than full-blown SRL.
That's the pattern, generally. And Robers actually hypothesized that EF might play a causal role in early metacognition development.
Ah, so EF helps kickstart that self-awareness.
Potentially, though that influence might lessen later as you build more domain-specific knowledge. But importantly, both SRL and EF can change throughout life. They're not fixed.
That's encouraging. Never too late to improve. Okay, so if they develop somewhat differently, how do researchers actually measure them? You hinted they use different approaches.
They really do. It's quite a contrast. SRL is typically measured in more authentic learning contexts.
Like in a classroom or while doing homework.
Exactly. Using things like self-report questionnaires, asking students about their strategies, motivation, etc., or microanalysis observing behavior very closely during a task, or even using trace data from online learning platforms.
So more in the wild.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to capture learning as it happens. EF, on the other hand, is often measured in more controlled, decontextualized lab settings.
The classic psych lab tests.
Right. Using specific tasks designed to tap into one EF component, like the Stroop test for inhibition.
Where you name the ink color, not the word.
That's the one. Or the Wisconsin card sorting test for shifting rules, or the Tower of London for planning, or sometimes batteries of these tasks. There are also EF questionnaires asking about everyday executive function behaviors.
So SRL often uses self-report in context.
Right.
EF often uses performance tasks out of context. That sounds like a major challenge for comparing them.
It absolutely is. And as Rovers et al. Pointed out, there's no single best way to measure SRL either. So this measurement difference is crucial when we look at the correlation findings.
Okay, makes sense. Before we get to the correlations, what about the bottom line academic achievement? How do SRL and EF relate to how well people actually do?
Both show pretty substantial links. Lots of research connects SRL to academic performance, though the strength varies. Think Broadbent and Prune, Dent and Kowenka.
So better self-regulators tend to do better.
Generally, yes. And EF is also a strong predictor of academic success. McClelland, Titson-Karbach, Robers, they've all shown this. EF can explain a significant chunk of why some students do better than others.
So both are important for succeeding academically.
Definitely. Which makes understanding their relationship even more relevant.
Right. So let's get to the core findings of the systematic review itself. They looked at 19 studies. What was the overall picture of the SRL-EF relationship?
The main takeaway, according to the review authors Durenbecker, Ulrich, and Brigola, is that the correlations found are primarily in the low to moderate range.
Low to moderate. Maybe lower than you'd expect given the conceptual overlap.
Potentially, yeah. And interestingly, they didn't find a really clear pattern based on the age group studied, although one study they cited, Effany et al., did suggest age matters.
So not strongly related overall. What factors did seem to influence the strength of the connection?
The measurement method was key. This is really important.
How so?
When both SRL and EF were measured indirectly, typically using self-report questionnaires for both.
Like asking people how good they think they are at planning and how often they think they use study strategies.
Exactly. In those cases, the correlations tended to be higher. But when EF was measured directly, using those cognitive performance tasks we talked about.
Like this group test.
Right. When EF was measured that way, the correlations with self-reported SRL were generally lower, sometimes quite weak.
So maybe the stronger link in self-reports is partly due to, well, people who rate themselves high on one thing might rate themselves high on another. Common method variance.
That's a likely explanation, yeah. Zöhnchen discussed this issue. Plus, there are always questions about how accurately people can self-report these kinds of skills.
Right. And what about metacognition in these findings?
When metacognition was measured via self-report, it often showed relatively high correlations with other self-report scales, whether they were labeled SRL or EF subscales.
Which reinforces that idea of it being a central overlapping component, at least in how people perceive it.
Exactly, and it fits with the findings from Fulmer and Sperling and Effany et al., suggesting metacognition might mediate the relationship between EF and SRL.
Mediate, meaning EF influences metacognition, which then influences SRL.
That's the idea. EF provides some capacity, which enables better metacognitive monitoring and control, which then manifests as more effective self-regulated learning. It's an indirect path.
Interesting. So not just EF SRL, but maybe EF metacognition manic SRL.
That seems to be a plausible model based on the evidence reviewed.
Okay. And linking back to achievement.
Well, both SRL and EF relate positively to achievement, as we said. Some studies hint that SRL might mediate the EF achievement link, so good EF helps you become a good self-regulator, which then leads to better grades. Rutherford et al. And Gurneisen et al. Found hints of this.
Okay.
But it's not always clear-cut. Other studies, like Cirino et al. Or Vitieler and Greenfield, found cases where EF seemed to be a stronger, more direct predictor of achievement than SRL.
So the jury's still out on the exact pathway to academic success.
It's complex, yeah. Probably involves interplay between both.
And what about studies looking at change over time or interventions? Were there many of those?
Unfortunately, those are still quite limited, which the review points out is a gap.
But there were some.
A few key ones mentioned. Davis et al. Did a longitudinal study. They found that kindergartners' EF predicted their SRL in first grade moderately well.
Okay, so EF first.
But SRL in kindergarten did not predict later EF, so that supports EF as maybe foundational.
Right.
Although they also noted their results could be interpreted as both SRL and EF measures, tapping into some common underlying factor.
The something else possibility.
Exactly. And an intervention study by Jacob and colleagues found that training SRL in preschoolers didn't seem to improve their EF skills.
So boosting SRL didn't automatically boost the underlying EF.
Apparently not in that study. It suggests they might be somewhat separate targets for intervention, perhaps.
Okay, so pulling this together, what are the big theoretical implications? How should we think about SRL and EF now?
Well, one big point is wrestling with why the correlations are often only low to moderate despite the theoretical overlap.
Right.
The measurement context difference, contextualized SRL versus decontextualized EF, is a major suspect. They might just function differently in different settings.
Maybe strong EF in the lab doesn't always translate to using SRL effectively during complex real-world learning.
Possibly. Mays et al. Even proposed a really interesting idea. Maybe an inverted U-shaped relationship exists, meaning that very high EF might actually correlate with lower observed SRL, perhaps because those individuals are so efficient they don't need to consciously regulate as much, or they use different strategies.
Wow, that's counterintuitive. High EF leading to less SRL.
Potentially in some situations. It's speculative, but worth exploring. The review also highlighted that we need more research looking at specific links, like how Zimmerman's phases of SRL relate to Miyake's components of EF.
We haven't really mapped those specifics well.
Not in detail, no. And many studies referencing Miyake's EF model didn't actually measure all three core components, especially if they relied only on questionnaire.
So our picture's still a bit fuzzy on the details.
It is. But the review authors propose a potential integrative framework, drawing on Robers and Kim et al.
Okay, what's the gist?
The idea is basic EF processes support the emergence of SRL. Metacognition acts as that crucial mediator or bridge, and SRL is then seen as the more domain-specific application of these broader cognitive EF and metacognitive skills within learning contexts.
So EF as foundational, metacognition as the link, SRL as the applied skill in learning.
That's the essence. And developmentally, EF could be seen as a precursor for SRL development.
That framework seems to tie a lot of the threads together nicely.
It does offer a useful way to conceptualize the relationship based on current evidence.
Which naturally leads to, what's next? What kind of research do we need now?
A big push is needed for more nuanced measurement. The review strongly recommends combining methods.
Like using self-reports and performance tasks for both.
Exactly. Get multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
For SRL, maybe combine questionnaires with think aloud protocols or microanalysis or learning trace data. For EF, use tasks alongside questionnaire.
Get a richer picture.
Precisely. And standardizing instruments across studies would be a huge help for comparing results.
Makes sense. What else?
We need to consider potential third variables. Could general intelligence, for example, influence both SRL and EF and explain some of the correlation?
Good point.
Replication studies with more diverse and representative samples are always important. And crucially, we need more longitudinal and intervention studies.
To understand development and causality.
Yes, to track the relationship over time. See if EF really does predict later SRL, test that mediating role of metacognition longitudinally, and see if interventions targeting one impact the other, especially looking for far transfer effects.
Like, does training working memory actually improve how students plan their studying later?
Exactly, those kinds of questions, really digging into the mechanisms and directionality.
This has been incredibly helpful for understanding this quite complex relationship. So to wrap up for everyone listening, what are the absolute key takeaways?
Okay, I'd say 1, SRL and EF are related but distinct. The correlations found are generally low to moderate.
Got it. Related, not the same.
2, how we measure them really matters. Self-reports tend to show higher correlations than performance tasks, likely due to method effects.
Measurement matters.
Okay. 3, metacognition looks like a critical piece of the puzzle, potentially bridging EF and SRL. It seems central to their overlap.
Metacognition as the bridge.
And 4, the developmental evidence, though limited, tentatively suggests EF might provide a foundation supporting the later development of SRL skills.
EF might come first.
Yeah, okay.
Great summary. It really highlights that effective learning isn't just about raw brain power or study habits alone, but this intricate dance between managing your thoughts and managing your learning process.
Absolutely. And it's clear there's still a lot more to uncover about how that dance works. Research is definitely ongoing.
So, a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. How might consciously working on your executive functions, maybe improving your focus, your ability to switch gears mentally, or your working memory, how might that indirectly level up your ability to self-regulate your own learning? Where could you focus your effort for the biggest impact? Maybe explore those specific EF and SRL components in your own life.
Great thought to leave people with.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.